Hey, it's Soleil, and this is episode 158 of the Orange Pill Investor. And today I want to talk about how much upside protection is required to not get shares called away. For the most part, I've been doing this for 4 years, and for the most part, I don't really care if shares get called away, except that I'm thinking that MicroStrategy is 5K, 10K plus at the end of 2025. So why in the name of God would I even sell covered calls in this? Why wouldn't I just sit there and sit on it? Well, that's a good question. It's it's basically what I do, so it's kind of hard to stop doing what I do. This is the strategy that I've been using for 4 years to good effect. And if the strategy works, you want it to work with the best asset that you can possibly get your hands on, and the best asset that I can get my hands on is MicroStrategy. So it remains to be seen whether this will be better than buy and hold or not, but it really kind of doesn't matter, because if my account doubles at this point, I'm calling in. I'm taking 2 weeks off and then quitting. So, but let's get into it. So I know it's not just me that kind of worries about their MicroStrategy shares getting called away. There's some other folks that have a vested interest as well. And before I get into that, though, my situation is a little bit different. So I am irresponsibly long MicroStrategy. I'm a member of the community, so like, that's not even just figuratively. I'm literally irresponsibly long. So how do you irresponsibly trade MicroStrategy responsibly, I guess is is the question I need to answer for myself. So not only am I not particularly diversified, so this account is like, it's got to be 75-80% MicroStrategy. I've got a decent position in Tesla, but that just is dwarfs. It just pales in comparison to my MicroStrategy holdings. So I've got a few of these little minors in here to try to make the algorithm happy. Sometimes when I try to place additional MicroStrategy trades, it'll tell me my concentration risk is too high. So I guess I'm so irresponsibly long that I'm even making tastytrade nervous. And the other thing that I will say about my situation, which may or may not be unique, and this is absolutely not financial advice, but so not only do I have a concentration risk in MicroStrategy, right? I have very little diversification, but this is a margin account. So if MicroStrategy takes a dump, gets cut in half or back down to 500, God forbid, this would undoubtedly become a margin call. I have no doubt in my mind. Now, I do have some funds, in case of emergency, break glass types of funds. I could, I know it's heretical to say, but I could sell some Bitcoin to avoid a margin call. I could, I have a home equity line of credit. I can immediately pull some equity off the house and avoid a margin call. So there's a few tools I have in my toolbox to mitigate this risk, right? So first risk, not diversified. Second risk, trading on margin, which is basically on borrowed money. But not only that, I've already borrowed money, basically signature loans, which is, luckily, they don't care about Bitcoin or MicroStrategy's price. So they're not going to know if I'm getting a margin call or not. But I've also borrowed money from the bank to buy more MicroStrategy. So my leveraged Like my leverage is leveraged at this point. And so for me, I've got the 1775 strikes. And so if the price goes to 2,000 this week and I'm forced to get some shares called away, that's probably a good thing for me. Like between now and the end of 2025, I need this buying power amount here to be way bigger. I need to deleverage some of this leverage. So for me, taking profits is an absolute requirement. Now, for other folks that are in a cash account or an IRA account, and you're not levered to the gills, and you're like, I don't need to take profits. I'm not leveraged, so I don't need to uncoil some of that leverage. Other people have completely different situations. So hopefully people are not just taking looking at the trades that I'm making and thinking, oh, okay, I can make the exact same trade. Like you have to do your own research. You have to be comfortable with risk. You have to make sure that you're comfortable with the risk of your shares getting called away as well. All right, so for me, I still want to avoid getting these MicroStrategy shares called away if at all possible. So I did some little spreadsheet work and put some numbers together, and there's a couple of assumptions. So if MicroStrategy, in order for MicroStrategy to get to 10K by the end of 2025, if it behaves the same way it did here, like it's around $500 a share, right? And then it 4x's to 2K, and then it crashes in half, and then settles in the middle somewhere. There's no guarantee that it'll do exactly this, but since it's already done it once, it's reasonable to believe that it can do it again. So here's the spreadsheet. So we've already had a 500 start, all-time high of 2,000, and that took about a month. And I went through and I just kind of, eyeballed it. It was like, okay, it was 500, and then a week later it was 1,000, and then and then it was like 1,500, and then boom, it's at 2K. And so if that, and then, then it went back down to 1,000 at the low. And right now it's about at 1,500. But if we say, okay, now it can pump a 4x again to 4,000, what would it look like to get from 1,000 to 4,000? So maybe the first week it goes up 50% to 1,500. And the next week it goes up another 50% to 2,250, and then another like 40% to get to 3,150, and then another 25%ish to get to 4,000. If the pattern that we've seen before repeats itself, this could be a scenario that plays out. And I generally build 20% call away in. So at the current price right here of 1,500, if the price goes up 50% and I have the 1,800 strikes, and it goes to 2,250, then 2,250 minus my 1,800 strikes, that's $450 times 100. For each covered call, I would be on the hook if I want to roll. If I just want to let the shares get called away, I can just let them be called away at 1,800. But if I want to maintain my 100 shares, I got to come up with 45 grand in cash to close out that position so I don't get exercised. Now the price is 2,250. So if I divide how much money I got to come up with by the share price, then that means if I have 20 extra shares that were uncovered, I could sell those for 2,250 to pay for the 45,000. So assuming And there's a lot of assumptions because it could go to 3,000. This is just, I'm just thinking this has happened before, so it happening again is fairly reasonable. That from, you know, from week 1 to week 2, it's possible that I could have to come up with $45,000 per share if the price pumps 50% in 1 week, and I only have 20%. I only have 20% callaway value built in. So that's basically a 20 delta. Now you can do this also with leaps. And the beauty of leaps is that as the price goes up, your delta increases. So right now I have 2 3,800 strikes for November. Now these are barely even leaps at this point because they're only 150 days away. So I will absolutely be selling these. Probably, I will start getting nervous in about 2 months when these are around 90 days to expiration. I will be looking to sell these for whatever kind of profit, or if they break even, you know, whatever it is. The value, especially at 45 to 60 days, the value is really going to start dropping out of these, the extrinsic value. So I do not want to be holding on to these. And I doubt I'm going to have time to go over this today, but I am going to go over in-depth comparison about what to do with these leaps. Because Punter Jeff, one half of the Quant Bros, you know, in a tweet basically said, you know, take a look at, you know, consider holding to near expiration and exercising. And I assume that that's because kind of like sticking it to the man, like, hey, go and get these shares. You know, don't just, you know, almost like you're giving them a free pass by selling the option for money instead of just exercising and making them go out in the open market and buy at the current share price, which would then inflate the share price even more. You know, like really just, especially if this hits a, you know, some kind of short squeeze situation, any buying pressure that you can apply is probably going to be a good thing. There are some tax ramifications. It actually, yeah, see, I'm already letting myself get off track. But exercising is also kind of good for your tax situation because the money that you paid for the option plus the money that you're paying for the shares goes towards your cost basis. And you're incurring a cost. You're not selling, so you actually wouldn't end up incurring a tax. I'm not a tax professional, so please don't take this as tax advice. But from the way that I understand it, you would not suffer a tax hit until you sell. But then again, your 1 year to try to get long-term capital gains, the timer starts ticking once you exercise. And if the Bitcoin cycle continues, then I don't necessarily know that I want to be holding MicroStrategy after 2025 as heavily as I do now. I will probably always have at least one position of a certain size in MicroStrategy, but I will definitely be paring that down at the end of 2025 in case the cycle continues, and especially since I need to deleverage some of my margin. Anyway, I'm going to do, I've got another idea for a video. I will probably be transitioning, you know, what, if not MicroStrategy, what would be worth owning. And I think Tesla will be kind of under a lull over the next year or so. They probably won't be able to just ramp up some of the money printing that they got coming in the next 5 to 10 years. So end of 2025 is going to be a perfect transition, in my opinion, from MicroStrategy to a larger Tesla holding. But that'll be a whole separate video, so we'll see. But you can see I have 2 of these, and the way that Tasty Trade measures the delta, it's probably, what is this, like 19 delta for each one, which, so each one of these calls right here would protect me approximately 20 delta in the same way that 20 shares does. So you can see that when you own a share, it's 1 delta. So since I have 210 shares of MicroStrategy, I'm 210 delta, long basically. And so each one of these should protect me in the same way that 20 shares would. Now I have 2 more that I picked up that have a little bit farther DTE, and those are 25 delta apiece. This is approximately 50 together. And that's the other thing. So this is just an assumption. Like, what if it goes up 50%? But what if MicroStrategy next week is at 3,000, or even actually goes up to 1,500 over my strikes? So in that case, if the price is 3,300, so 3,300 minus my 1,800 strikes is 1,500 times $100. I got to come up with $150,000 for each covered call. And if the price is 3,300 now, I'd have to have 45 shares. So I would need 45 delta somewhere to account for this. Otherwise, my shares are getting called away. I would not have enough buying power to be able to afford to roll this. Now, there's some other margin tricks. So as this pumped, my margin buying power would probably increase as well. So I would end up having more buying power to probably do this. But that's getting a little funky. But yeah, so this is how you would figure it out. You basically just say, okay, what strikes am I going to pick? And if, yeah, let's just say it doubles. So if the price goes to 3,000, and I have the 1,800 strikes, that's 20%. I got to come up with 1,200 a share times 100 shares. And the current price is 3,000. So price pumps to $3,000 by Friday. I need 40 shares or 40 delta in order to be able to have something that I can sell high in order to prevent these from being called away. And keep in mind, that's for each covered call. So if I'm worried about, if I'm worried about a pump to $3,000, and I have 2 covered calls, I need 80 shares uncovered. I need 80 delta. And what do I have? I got 10 delta on shares. I got 40. Actually, I have 100 delta. Interesting. Now, here's the cool part. So I don't expect to be able to exercise either of these at all, because that means that MicroStrategy would have to pump so high above 3,800 that it would even make sense to exercise. Like if MicroStrategy only goes to 4,000, next week, I could exercise it, but I would have to pay. I would have to pay 3,800 for them, and the price would be 4,000, and I'd only make $200 per share. So, that really wouldn't make sense when by next week the price of this option would skyrocket. So exercising would not make any sense. And let's just see what it is. Okay, that's my Amazon return. You don't care about that. All right, so MicroStrategy, this is optionsprofitcalculator.com. This is a very handy tool. So I have the November 15th. You go in here, you pick your option. I'm all the way at the top of the chain. And let's calculate. Probably already had it calculated. But if next week, you know, June 19th, whatever, 25th, the price pumps to $4,000 a share, I am filthy rich. I just 10x'd my money, right? But if I exercise it, I got to pay $3,800 a share, and I make almost no money. So that makes no sense to exercise. Now, okay, but what if I just hold until expiration then? Well, if I hold the expiration and the price stays 4,000, now I only make 12 grand. You know, it's worth 20. I paid 8. I get 12 left, or I get, yeah. So this isn't out of the money call, and it's short enough duration that I probably do not want to hold this to expiration. So deciding whether to exercise is, you know, it would be great to just stick it to them and be like, yeah, go get me my shares, you know, go buy the shares. But that doesn't necessarily make any sense unless the price goes to like 10 grand by next week. Okay, if the price goes to 10 grand, then I can make, you know, 600,000. And if I hold to expiration, it's like, you know, it goes from like 620,000 and it only goes down to, you know, 600,000. So I would lose 20 grand on that trade by holding it, which is kind of no big deal because I made 600,000. I don't really give a shit about the 20. At that point, I'm just balling and I'm making it rain. So, you know, basically, like at that point, I'm like, okay, I can tip the casino 20 grand after making 600,000. But I do not expect this to be 10 grand in the next 3 months. So that's not really in my plans. I'm basically just owning these as an insurance policy in case MicroStrategy does pump to 2,670 next week, and I got to come up with 50 grand or something. Well, here's 46,000. Actually, if I have the 1,800 strikes, then it goes to 2,670. That's like 800 a share. So I'd have to come up with 80 grand. And I have 2 of these, so that would actually work out perfectly. These 2 options is fully insuring me on an insane move this week if MicroStrategy were to almost double. So take a look at your individual situation, and there's something else that I kind of wanted to talk about, and that's in investing and in life in general, you need to decide what you want. But for most people, it's hard to imagine what they want, so it's much easier to identify the things that you don't want. And if you absolutely do not want your shares being called away, then maybe selling covered calls is not for you, because that is a potential result. But for me, a structured mechanical way to generate profits weekly, which I can either use to pay the bills, or I can reinvest and buy more shares and buy more leaps and get longer. You know, I'm selling short and a short days to expiration to go longer, you know, out into the future. and kind of just a mechanical way to deleverage some of this leveraged long position, and kind of like, okay, I'm willing to sell high. Well, at what price am I willing to sell high? Okay, 20% this week. That's worth it. So I can set 1775 as my strike. Willing to collect, $1,600 for that, which I can use to, buy some Tesla, buy some mining stock, or buy a share of MicroStrategy itself, and get up to 211 delta. For me, that's an unemotional way to kind of plan for my deleveraging. Now, the rest of this chart, so if we get a quadruple and a pullback to half, and we get another quadruple and a pullback to half, and another quadruple, it's going to take another 3 of these for us to get to 10K. And over 18 months, it's 78 weeks. And if this happens 3 more times, and it's already happened once, so of that 78 weeks, about 60 of them will just be profit, where the price is either flat like it's been. We've been trading sideways within a range here. So MicroStrategy will either be doing that, or it will be crashing like this. And in this hypothetical scenario. And then if we get to 10K using this pattern, it's going to take another 3 pumps to get us to 10. And then really 4 if you want to say that 10 ends up becoming the floor, because the next pump would be the 32. But that leaves about 46 weeks where I'm just earning the premium and my strikes are not being blasted through. And right now, if I'm collecting 1% a week, then I'm only able to pick up, and like if this was just perfect, it's like, okay, 15 weeks before this happens, and then another 15 weeks before this happens, another 15 weeks before this happens, then I would only be able to pick up 15 shares here before this event. And then, 20% of my 20 shares get called away here, 20 shares get called away here, maybe another 15 here, and just like 1 or 2 here. There's not enough time picking up 1 per week in order to replenish all of these shares that get called away during this month. So I may have just made a very good case for the average person to not sell covered calls in MicroStrategy. If you're afraid of the shares getting called away, unless you are planning for that and just saying like, yeah, if you think the stock can go up 50%, you're going to need 20 delta per covered call to cover that. If you think the stock could double, you're probably going to need 40 or 50 delta. And it's going to be an interesting 18 months. So I think that's everything that I wanted to say about this. It was definitely eye-opening for me, but it was kind of cool to imagine a scenario where 10K, how would we get to 10K? Sometimes it's helpful to go to the finish line and then work back from there. Like, okay, if we end up at 10K, how would we get there? Oh, okay, double, double, double. And how many doublings would it take to get from where we are to that point? So this was a nice little thought experiment for me, and I hope it helps folks have reasonable expectations for what the strategy can do, the risks, and whether it's worth doing at all, or whether, you know, it's better to just YOLO and sit there and sit on your hands and do nothing for 18 months. Oh, that's one other thing. So there's another guy that I've been following, and he's got some decent advice, like Coach Mac or something like that. And one thing that he likes to do is, I guess if he owned MicroStrategy, he would wait for this pump and then he'd sell covered calls. And then when on the dip here, then maybe he would sell puts. And then when it pumps here, he'd sell covered calls. Now that is great. However, with MicroStrategy, even that won't necessarily save you, because if you sold covered calls here at 800, was it 700, and you would be printing money to here, right? And then maybe you don't sell a covered call here because you're just good like that. And then this pumps again to 800, and you're like, oh, okay, time to sell covered calls again. I'm gonna sell the 20% call away. I'm gonna go like 950 or 1,000, and then a week later, it is 1,000. And you're like, oh man, I timed that shit perfect. But are you gonna be like, okay, I gotta sell covered calls when it's high, so I'm loading up on covered calls here, right? I'm gonna sell the 1,200 now, but next week it's 1,500. And hindsight is 20/20. But when you're making this trade, this is what you see. So even where he's being surgical and very tactical, which I kind of like that, the way he's describing it, it's still not going to save you from getting wrecked here when the price is 800, and then it's like, oh shit, the price is 1,000. You can't see this frickin' green ass candle, so you're like, damn, I doubled my money. I own shares down here at 500. Price is 1,000. I'm gonna sell covered calls at 1,200. And they're like, oh, well, how about 1,500? How about 2,000? 1,800? Whatever. You can still get wrecked doing what he's doing, but maybe you don't get wrecked as badly as I did. So that's something to think about for people who are perfectly happy doing a buy and hold, and then maybe you do say, okay, well, I'm not going to sell covered calls until this triples. So if MicroStrategy can quadruple in a month, then I won't sell covered calls until I get the triple. I won't sell covered calls until it gets to 1,500 a share. And now I got the 1,800. Boom, nailed it. Then I got the 2,000. Boom, nailed it. And then after it quadruples, maybe you even get greedier and you start selling with 10% call away value or at the money. It's easy to imagine being the perfect trader when you can see the chart in the past. It's much harder to decide what to do on Friday when you're like, oh, okay, I can print money picking this strike this week, and then it doesn't print money because MicroStrategy goes to the moon. So there's going to be some serious, violent Bitcoin pumps, and MicroStrategy is going to be even violenter. So be careful with your trades out there, and I hope this helps you develop your own model for how much risk you're willing to take or not willing to take with your precious MicroStrategy shares. All right, I think that's it for now. Be good, Joe.